As a preface, I will not be reading any of the little images that come with it, but I will read the main paragraph text first, and then from left to right and down to bottom, I will read the small text passages as I finish the pages. Chapter 1: Attitude and Behavior. Who's the manager? Personal reflection on conflict. In order to better understand yourself as a classroom manager, take some time to explore these questions, jot some notes in response. 1. How did your parents discipline you? Were they direct, passive aggressive? Who was the authority figure? 2. When you manage your own children or students, what techniques do you use that you learn differently from your parents? Or what do you do the same as your parents? 3. What is your style for handling conflict in your personal life? Avoiding. You avoid the situation for several days before addressing the conflict. Assertive. You address the situation soon after the event has happened. Or calm and able to discuss what happened. Peacemaking. You do everything possible to avoid conflict, even if it means you do not address the situation. Aggressive. You confront the situation right as it is happening. If people get angry, that's okay, as long as you have a chance to say your piece. Passive aggressive. You do not directly confront the situation, but avoid the person, making sarcastic comments or show subtle signs of hostility or aggression. 4. Do you handle conflict in the same manner with both males and females? If not, how does your handling of conflict with males and females differ? 5. Do you handle conflict differently with persons of different ethnic backgrounds? If not, how does your handling of conflict differ from person to person? 6. When you are in a conflict, what do you fear most? In the beginning, they scared me, these young adolescents I had agreed to teach. They said and did weird things, such as the time Brian came up to me and asked, Miss Campbell, what is your last name? I thought to myself, is this really happening? That was just before I thought to myself, what was I thinking when I decided to be a middle school teacher? Or the time that Clarice began dancing alone in the center of the room and swaying back and forth with not a care in the world. This is while I was presenting a scintillating geography lesson with great flair. When I asked, Clarice, what on earth are you doing? She answered, oh, sorry, Miss C. I'm just not used to free time, so I thought I would try this. Free time? Or the time a student told me to fuck off and threw a chair right at the high point of my dynamic interactive lecture on colonialism. How could he? Maybe he had snooped into my lesson plans and noticed that I had labeled my teaching strategy as interactive and thought cursing and chair throwing was part of the plan. And the time when a student, I'll not divulge the name, exiting my 5th period class swore that he would come after me when school ended that day. I struggled to figure out how to manage these squirrels on amphetamines, as they had been described to me. I thought I was the only teacher who was dazed and confused, but I now know that I had company. Most middle level and high school teachers take a college course or two on discipline or classroom management. But for most of us, the realities of handling the students are getting along and getting along with them, not to mention helping them get along with each other, while actually trying to teach them something, only sink in when we are actually on the job. By about the 4th day, we discover that 90% of the job is managing kids, finding ways keep everyone moving in some sane pattern with little interruption, and when we new teachers figure this out, we spend the next 3 months wondering why in the world we took this job. Whether you've been teaching a few days or several years, and whether you teach elementary, middle school, or high school, you have undoubtedly figured this out. You may be highly intelligent, you may have had a perfect GPA in teacher training or grad school, you may be able to design creative, compelling, well organized lessons, but if you can't manage the students, you can't teach them. There's plenty of research documenting the various connections between classroom climate and student performance, but no middle school teacher or high school teacher that I know of needs to research to convince her or him of this truth. If you fail to run a classroom that operates fairly smoothly with a minimum of disruptions and bad behavior, there will be little effective learning. Beyond the drawbacks for students, consistent frustration with student behavior leads to teacher burnout. Student misbehavior is reported as one of the primary reasons teachers leave the profession. Grayson and Alvarez, 2007, Ingersoll, 2001. Improved learning experiences for students, more joy for teachers, and a decrease in discipline problems and classroom interruptions. These are more than ample reasons to work towards satisfying and satisfactory classroom management. Discipline issues at the middle school and high school levels have increased in recent years. There's been a dramatic rise in rates of misbehavior, suspension, and expulsion at the middle school level, SKIBA 2000. Middle level and secondary teachers are less able to manage difficult student behavior than elementary school teachers, Baker 2005. Seventh grade students with a history of discipline problems are at high likelihood for becoming at risk or dropping out of school by ninth grade, Murdoch, Anderman, and Hodge 2000. The number one factor in classroom management. You may think that kids' misbehavior is the major component of classroom management. This certainly accounts for most frustration, time, and energy. You may blame the parents who aren't involved in their kids' education enough, aren't setting limits, or aren't helping kids be responsible. You may think it's the current culture with its media messages, attitudes toward learning, lure of getting something without working for it, poverty, hopelessness, apathy, distractions of technology, or any number of cultural conditions that contribute to misbehavior in the classroom. Many teachers see their schools as having inconsistent, or no, policies regarding student behavior, and blame the system for the increasing struggles with discipline and student attitudes. Yes, all this stuff contributes to the problems in the classroom. But if you are going to have a safe, comfortable, orderly, mostly, classroom climate in which students can learn well, you will need to come face to face with the key ingredient in effective or ineffective classroom management. And that is not the students. It is none other than of the other things listed. It is you, the teacher. I believe that your classroom management is rooted in who you are as a person. You bring all these to school with you your personal out of school experiences, your relationships, your history, and your tendencies. This is why I began this chapter with a reflection on page 6. Take a few minutes to go back and review your notes on that page. How you handle conflict in your life plays a huge role in the classroom manager you become. Students come, and as the school year ends, they go. The most troublesome students will be in someone else's class, but the management issues you had last year with student X or Y or Z still will be with you when those kids are gone. That's because the students move on, but you stay. And the patterns that aren't working, they stay too. If you work with pre adolescents or adolescents, conflict will be part of your classroom life. There will be conflict with them and between them. In order to establish an effective management style, you must examine your relationship to conflict. You will have a tendency to handle conflict and issues in the classroom, and with your colleagues and parents at school, in the same way you manage these in your life outside school. This is particularly true in highly tense or uncomfortable situations. Do you avoid confrontation? Try to get away from conflict at all costs? Keep your cool? Ignore or downplay anger, aggression, or conflict? Lose your temper? Give in? Give up? Respond immediately and directly with little emotion? Get away, think about things, and confront later? Feel paralyzed? Feel personally attacked? Do you threaten? Get defensive? Shout? Try to smooth it over? Whatever is your usual habit will probably be your fallback position as you manage students in the classroom. Students move on, but you stay, and the patterns that aren't working, they stay too. That was said earlier. Why? You won't have the same reactions to all students. Because you have different histories and relationships with different kinds of people, your management style will vary for different kinds of students. How do you handle conflict with male versus females? How do you handle conflict with people of different race or culture? In my household, we never listened to our mother, but when our father spoke, we paid attention. So my tendency is to respond differently in conflict with males, male students, male colleagues, male authority figures. It will be natural for your reactions to vary for different genders, cultures, styles, attitudes, or personalities of students, but still, in each different situation, you will likely revert to the response that is most familiar. Who you were as a student affects your responses to your present students. There's a tendency to think that the best or right way for a student to be is the way we were as a student. For example, a teacher friend of mine can remember being in trouble only once at school for something minor like handing in a paper in the wrong basket. because he expects kids to be like he was as a student. He has a bunch of issues dealing with his students. He never anticipates student reactions, tricks, manipulations, work avoidance, tendencies, mischievousness, or misbehavior. So he is completely blindsided by student behaviors. Now, as for me, I was the class clown, the entertainer. I was the kid who caused the trouble, who had all kinds of clever shenanigans up my sleeve, and quick, funny comebacks, so I anticipate this kind of stuff. I often see trouble before it comes, and I'm ready for it. This may give me a slight advantage, but then, I have other habits and past experiences that I have to combat when I respond to student behavior. Who you are affects every aspect of your management. This you factor spreads way beyond situations of conflict. Your whole management style and your relationships with students are affected by how you were disciplined, how you feel about and respond to conflict, experiences you had as a student, how you felt as about yourself as a student, how you feel about students as a group, how you feel about individuals in your class, what you really believe about students, how you feel about your competence as a teacher, how you feel about your ability to manage students. This is good news. Many years ago, a wise child psychologist, Hom Gino, wrote a simple book with a powerful message for teachers. Teacher and Child, 1972. His message rescued many frazzled teachers from chaotic classrooms. There's a basic premise of his beliefs. I've come to the frightening conclusion that I am the decisive element in the classroom. It's personal approach that creates the climate, it's my daily mood that makes the weather. As a teacher, I possess tremendous power to make a student's life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humiliate or humor, hurt or heal. In all situations, it is my response that decides whether a crisis will be escalated or de escalated, and a student humanized or dehumanized. Page 13. I can hear you thinking, this is good news? Yes, it is. We teachers can really make a difference in the lives of our students. We can combat all those influences that contribute to problems in the classroom. See these back on page 9. We can humor, we can heal, we can humanize, we can inspire. But we can only do so if we get it. Get what? Get that we are the decisive element in our classrooms. Fully believing that you, the teacher, are the root of successful classroom management, I want to share some ideas about what this means and what to do about it. Skip the judgment. Don't be discouraged about any of your answers to the questions on the reflection at the beginning of this chapter. Don't be intimidated by the statement of Haim Gino's frightening conclusion in the quote above. Don't feel guilty about any of your answers to the questions about how you can handle conflict in your personal life, pages 10 and 11. I have not raised these questions to assign right or wrong, good or bad. So to get started on your journey of becoming a better classroom manager, leave self-judgment and self-criticism at the classroom door. Be aware. In the chapters that follow, there will be plenty of ideas and strategies for things such as running a smooth classroom, building good relationships with students, setting rules and procedures, enforcing consequences, and helping students develop inner discipline. But here, I begin the book by focusing on you because I believe that you bring your whole self into the classroom every day. The best thing you can do about that is to be aware of what it is that you bring. Ask yourself the kinds of questions I've asked in this chapter. Pay attention to the answers. This will help you select techniques to use with students. For example, if your tendency is to avoid conflict, you can plan ahead for situations in which you must directly address the conflict. And you can start practicing some techniques for meeting conflict head on. If you tend to back off disciplining a girl when she turns into a drama queen, you can be ready with an approach that does not let unacceptable behavior go unaddressed. You can think ahead and identify your fallback position in certain situations. You will not be caught off guard, you'll be ready. Check your attitude. Pre-adolescents and adolescents will pick up every attitude you have about them, about learning, about classroom life, and about your job as a teacher. Figure it out from the way you talk to them, the way you teach them, the way you discipline them, the amount of interest you show in them, what you expect from them, your body language, and from 100 other signals and messages you send, many of them unintentional. As you examine what it is you bring to the classroom, this will affect your management. Do a thorough review of what it is you really believe about your students. Do you see students as significant? Do you see them as capable? Do you believe that they are able to be in control of their own lives? Do you truly accept every student? Do you believe that every one of them can learn and succeed? Do you want to know them? Are you appreciative of each one's uniqueness? Do you know and accept their developmental characteristics? Are you judgmental of their habits, attire, interests, fads, or passions? Do you like your job? Do you enjoy being with your students? Do you favor certain kinds of students? Are you afraid of any of them? Take a hard look at your answers and try to see yourself as your students will see you. Believe me, they will tune into your attitudes, and if your attitudes are disapproving, annoyed, impatient, or discriminatory, they will tune you out. You'll lose their confidence and connection, and this will spell trouble. Get an attitude adjustment where necessary. Keep your mind free of judgment and open to full appreciation of every student. This attitude will have a positive effect on your classroom management, I guarantee. A teacher who cares about me believes that I can do well and helps me reach my goals. Andre, grade 8. Be real. Just as they have radar out for adult attitudes about them, students have a keen sense for authenticity. Some teachers put on a facade of what they think a teacher should be. No teacher can pretend care, interest, or respect without being detected. Talk in your normal voice, not a pretend teacher voice. Don't insult your students with an artificial self. They deserve to be educated by a genuine human being. Take the risk. I can't even count the number of teachers who have told me that being firm or direct is not their personality. They say that confronting behavior is just not who they are. I believe them. I understand this. Certain behaviors do or do not come easily to certain personalities. But don't we ask our students to take academic risks every single day? Don't we ask them to expand their thinking? Don't we sometimes ask them to work with other students who may terrify them? We ask students to do many things not fitted to their personality or that are not them. As a person, we ask them to overcome their fears and do experiment with new ways of acting or learning. Why should we, as educators, be any different? Why should we not have to change the methods that don't work well or contribute to a good learning environment? Why should we not examine and adjust our personal styles in order to improve the learning and safety of our classroom? My former principal, Terry Wolfson, used to ask her struggling teachers the following question: what are you getting out of the current situation that you are not willing to change? In other words, what is stopping you from changing your current methods of classroom control? I think this is a good question for all of us to ask. Then I'll add these questions. So, what are you willing to change in your management style to have a more effective classroom? What risks are you willing to take to ensure that all students have the same opportunity to learn? We all have different fears, motivations, and personalities, therefore, some of the suggestions in the box may not fit into your toolbox. Some may not match who you are, they may not seem to fit with your hesitations around classroom management. However, the not matching does not mean you should get off the hook with the excuse, it's not who I am. Instead, be open minded. Think about how, with some strategic changes, you can make each technique fit for you. I will provide a variety of practical strategies and techniques that you can add to your repertoire in the arena of classroom management. I have also offered some type of self reflection, opportunity to set the stage for each chapter. My hope is that by taking time to personally reflect on some issues surrounding management, you will better understand your own style and philosophy for developing a safe and effective classroom. I encourage you to take the risk to do this kind of reflection. I encourage you to take risks to try new strategies, even if they are uncomfortable for you in the beginning. What are you willing to change in your management style to have a more effective classroom? How you can create management problems. Wait a minute, isn't this a book to help reduce management problems? It is a huge part of the goal. is connected to understanding what teachers do to actually create and increase disturbances, issues, and problems in the classroom. To start your search for help with better classroom management by noticing what you might be doing that creates problems or makes a problem worse. I guarantee an increase in chaos and behavior problems if you follow these steps. 1. Fail to pay attention to what is happening in all corners of your room. 2. Don't take time to build relationships and community within your classroom. 3. Underestimate the importance of communicating well with parents. 4. Be disorganized or skimp on planning. 5. Be poorly prepared when the bell rings. 6. Let students sit wherever they want. 7. Respond inconsistently or intermittently to misbehavior. Allow a situation or issue to get out of hand before you intervene. Give little thought to the effects of the physical classroom arrangement. Start the year with no established rules or routines for behaviors or academics. 11. Fail to follow established rules or procedures consistently. 12. Do not establish clear consequences. 13. Leave students out of the discussion about what the rules and consequences of breaking them should be. 14. Don't anticipate challenges that might arise with the lesson. 15. Yell at students. 16. Call students out, disciplining or scold in front of their classmates. 17. Do not be direct with students. Do not tell them specifically what you need them to do. 18. Think that if you are nice, students will like you and therefore will behave. Allow yourself to be drawn into power struggles with students. 20. Sit at your desk when the group is engaged in a discussion or lesson. 21. Sit at your desk when small groups are working. 22. Fail to recognize who the leaders are in each classroom. 23. Commit to use the exact same management strategies with all students. 24. Call a student's parents about an issue without first trying to work out the problem with the student. 25. Expect students to work long stretches of time without breaks, movement, or change of pace. How you can prevent management problems. In his studies of effective and ineffective classroom managers, Jacob Conan discovered that the key to successful management was not what the teachers did to handle misbehavior. It was, instead, the strategies teachers used to prevent problems from occurring in the first place. Conan, 1977. Here are some strategies that I know reduce management issues and avoid chaos. 1. Have eyes in the back of your head. Be aware of everything going on. 2. Be deliberate in building relationships with your students. 3. Be deliberate in planning community building experiences for your class or team. 4. Find ways to communicate frequently with parents. 5. Be ultra organized. 6. Be fully prepared and ready to roll when the bell rings. 7. Seat students in arrangements that will reduce disruptions or problems. 8. Arrange classroom materials, furniture, and traffic patterns to reduce potential distractions and issues. 9. Set clear expectations for behavior and academics. 10. Establish and teach the routines and rules of your classroom. 11. Make sure consequences of misbehavior are clear and reasonable. 12. Respond consistently to misbehavior according to established procedures. 13. Address a problematic situation before it gets out of hand. 14. Recognize that students need and must have breaks. 15. Plan ahead for transitions, how to make them in an orderly way and how to end them. 16. Create lessons that are engaging and relevant. 17. Be consistent, firm, and fair when dealing with discipline issues. 18. Be direct and honest when redirecting students. 19. Do not be afraid to use appropriate humor. 20. Do not yell, blame, shame, threaten, belittle, bribe, preach, or discipline a student in front of classmates. Be yourself. The psychologist and educator Carl Rogers wrote, "It is quite customary for teachers rather consciously to put on the mask, role, the facade of being a teacher, and to wear this facade all day, removing it only when they have left school at night." 1969, page 107. Although his statement is 50 years old, it fits many teachers still today. Think about whether this applies at all to you. Leave your mask at home. Better yet, shred it. A large portion of this chapter is titled, "This is Good News." Remember? Here is some more good news. Jacob Kunin, classroom management researcher and theorist, studied the behaviors of effective and ineffective classroom managers. He concluded that success with classroom management is unrelated to the personality of the teacher. Instead, it is dependent upon technique. 7. Hear that? It is not about your personality. It is about what you do. This means that whoever you are as a person, you can have the kind of classroom climate that you'd like. You don't have to be a comedian to use humor in your classroom. You don't have to be an aggressive person to handle issues directly and promptly. You don't have to be a natural therapist to build good relationships with students. You don't have to be anyone else or try to adopt another personality. You just have to learn some techniques. This you can do. I'd like to offer some advice and techniques to help you. Things I have learned from experience, from colleagues, and especially from my students. That is the end of chapter 1, Attitude and Behavior, the Teachers.